ugly race card. I see by the video online that our mayor is pulling the race card. I have seen it in the railway. A Liberal member of Parliament used it every time he got into trouble when he worked for the railway. All the minority groups used it when the situation was desperate. Mr. Mayor, the race card is not the card to pull. Sorry, you just blew it. Mike Griffith. It does appear to have backfired. Enough is enough, dear Mr. Nenshi. When you speak it sounds like whispers of what might have been if you had an open mind instead of the obsession that only your ideas are the wise ones. What an insult for you to insinuate that the voters are looking at color of skin and religious beliefs in relation to you and your campaign. Calgary people don't care about this. Our last 2 elections speak volumes to this. The truth of what you said you would do and never did is now engraved in the minds of those who elected you. It is time to move on and to let others run our city and make its citizens proud once again. Theo Jensen. It's always been about the platform, the ideas and the results. Go NENSHI, go give your head a shake, Calgarians. Mayor Naheed Nenshi has always championed for the average Joe, and has successfully taken on the moneybags on behalf of the majority of citizens. He has led the fight on behalf of the taxpayer to have the billionaire ownership of the Calgary Flames franchise pay out of their own pocket to build a new hockey arena for the Flames. The fake poll that had Smith in the lead has now been uncovered as inaccurate. Mayor Nenshi has a substantial lead in the revised poll. You rock, Mayor Nenshi. Don't let anyone tell you different. Casper Fenninger. Fake poll, utter nonsense, Casper. NDP off the rails. I was always of the opinion that political parties at least knew how to play the political game. As we watch the NDP fumble and bumble their way through what I am sure will be their only kick at the can as government, it becomes more and more evident that they are not up to the task. They clearly like the fact that Calgary's mayor is a socialist and shares their ideology. How could they be so stupid to think they were helping him by announcing that there may not be any funding for the Green Line if we don't re-elect this mayor and council? The fact that Calgary is the least likely place the NDP can look for support makes their silly announcement less likely to garner votes for the mayor. I would be willing to bet that the mayor is sitting in his office and silently saying to the NDP, please stop helping the Keel. But how would we get to shepherd it's the record just how desperate is Mayor Naheed Nenshi now? He's playing the race card. This is a sign that shows that he knows he's in trouble. Mr. Nenshi, this is about your record, period. Out of control spending, tax increases, the arrogance of City Hall all are contributing to your being behind in the polls. Are you insinuating that anyone who votes against you is a racist? This election is not about race. If Calgarians were racist, why were you elected and re-elected? Maybe you should keep on topic and not stoop to such levels. You're embarrassing yourself. Scott Ellefson. Politics of division. Junk mail blues. Just an observation from my mailbox today. We had a number of inserts that I know Canada Post is paid to do and required to deliver. The majority were for the upcoming election and the others were for cheap food from local chain restaurants. Guess which ones went into the recycle bin first? David L. Robertson. Knowledge is power, if you can believe what you are reading. Silent majority. There seems to be a huge number of anti-Nenshi letters in the papers these days, and my sentiments towards his chances of continuing to be Calgary's mayor falls in line with many of your writers. Unfortunately, one needs to remember that the silent majority of voters neither write editorials nor listen to the polls, so don't be surprised if Nenshi continues to be the exalted one chosen to run this beloved city of ours. Patrick Ancelin. It's a free country and people have every right to vote for whoever they choose. Eastern shame. Talk about hypocrisy. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau blaming the Western proponents of Energy East for stoking national divisions when his deliberate restocking of the National Energy Board with anti-Canadian energy apparatchiks, resulting in the cancellation of that vital pipeline, led to Trudeau pal Dennis Coderre and assorted uninformed Eastern goons trumpeting their delight at the demise of Western economic hopes. Even worse, Trudeau's throttling of Alberta oil does nothing to lessen Canadian carbon emissions, or the East's voracious appetite for gasoline guzzling. The lost Canadian product will be replaced by massive shipments of totally unregulated oil shipments from some of the world's worst human rights regimes, plus the USA that, apart from opposing numerous Canadian initiatives, is responsible for the gigantic foreign oil disaster. Total foreign oil imports should be limited to an amount above the maximum that could be provided by Canadian sources if not barred by Trudeau's one-sided restrictions. Alexander Mackay. It's beyond ridiculous how Alberta oil is being shunned in favor of offshore deliveries. Sore loser. It used to be that the last refuge for a scoundrel was patriotism. Today the last refuge for a scoundrel is to play the race card. And so, Naheed Nenshi pulls the race card out now that he's losing the mayoral race. When he was winning, everything was fine and dandy, but now that he's on his way out, he sees racists and bigots. The man thinks Calgary residents are naive or foolish, for only a fool would fall for this transparent ploy. We are witnessing a sore loser in action, folks, and it isn't a pretty sight. Nenshi isn't losing due to any racism or bigotry. He's losing because he's a terrible mayor, wastes money, is divisive, and has long overdue on his best before date. Barry Bannock. That is what Calgarians appear to be saying in the polls. Clean slate please. Regarding civic elections, I will not vote for any of the incumbents. None of them represent, or even come anywhere close to, what I call the real Calgarians. Here are some recent examples of what real Calgarians will not do. Steal $52 million of taxpayers' money, keep stealing similar amounts year after year. If you want more money, be honest and try to raise the taxes. The Midfield catastrophe. Real Calgarians do not break their promises, written, verbal, or even implied. Real Calgarians go out of their way to help the unfortunate. These incumbents caused the residents to become the unfortunate. The mayor's $300,000 settlement, paid by the city my money with an interest-free loan. Eventually, 75% of it covered by tax-deductible donations to the city. Add to this the Uber taxi ride video. The treatment of the Citizens Committee to study the salary levels of the civic government was reprehensible. Real Calgarians are always civil and courteous. Add to these, the amounts spent on items of secondary, even tertiary importance, like bike paths, unnecessary bridges, the blue hula hoop, the rusty thingies, and a slew of other projects. But ignore items of primary importance such as proper snow removal. The school's own playground zone debacle. They can't even handle a simple thing as that. The number of behind-the-closed-doors council meetings. Transparency is not in the councillors' vocabulary. The list goes on and on. Let's hope the new faces will do better. YERSEL. It's been called the worst council in decades. Plea for status quo. With just a few days left until the civic election, calls for change seem to have eclipsed the importance of policy positions. A polarity of divergent interests and perspectives, accompanied by a fair amount of emotion thrown in for good measure, has piqued an interest among voters. This appears to be particularly true of the mayoral race. It is a classic case of competing ideological agendas, and the citizens of Calgary are about to choose the direction of our city into the foreseeable future. Therefore, it cannot be overemphasized that the voices advocating for change, merely for the sake of change itself, must each be prepared to accept the consequences and responsibility for the results should they prevail. It's time to choose. Do you endorse a scorched earth economic agenda that negatively impacts an already struggling economy? Are you prepared to accept a growing infrastructure deficit and a dramatic reduction in, or the complete elimination of, important services you rely on? Are you prepared to watch property values plummet and the local economy stagnate for years? Interest in Calgary as a community open for business will evaporate, unemployment will spike, and many more will suffer, aided by the regressive policies proposed by Bill Smith. Alternatively, you can recognize the ongoing positive transformation our city is experiencing. We are slowly and painfully developing a culture and a vision for the future. It hasn't been easy, nor has it been cheap. Mistakes have been made and the current administration has stumbled. Improvements can and should be made at City Hall, and Calgarians deserve answers to some important questions. Overall, however, we are the beneficiaries of policies that are dragging Calgary out of a dusty past into a vibrant and inclusive future community for our children and the many others who will choose to live here. The wisdom of maintaining and expanding infrastructure now, while costs are lower, cannot be underestimated or ignored. Love him or hate him, Mayor Naheed Nenshi has shown positive leadership during a difficult economic downturn. Time for a change. Be careful what you wish for, the result may not be what you imagine. BLEACKLEY. Calgary was a great city long before this mayor's terms. Plenty of reasons so soon-to-be ex-mayor Naheed Nenshi has pulled out the race card. It is good to see that he is getting desperate. That the only reason that people say negative things about him is because they are racists and that he is the only candidate that can represent diversity. Well, here are some of the things that have made me strongly dislike you, Mayor. The shameful way you and council treated the residents of Midfield. Shooting your mouth off and getting sued for slandering a local businessman and expecting taxpayers to pay for it. Embarrassing the entire city by getting caught on camera running your mouth in Boston slandering a respected company. Talking about the drunken orgies in City Hall and then not being able to substantiate an instance where it happened. talking about the city staffers being assaulted at an open house for the South BRT and shutting down taxpayer input and not being able to substantiate the allegations. Not being able to do your job properly and having to hire additional playpen staff to point out what is right, wrong, or illegal, and needing to hire someone to conduct meetings for you. Hiding behind closed doors so the taxpayers don't find out until it is too late what new waste of tax money has been approved. Not listening when taxpayers have said stop treating us like ATMs. These are just a few of the reasons, and take notice, being Muslim is not one of them. Kelly Pratt. Calgarians respect results. Slam on the brakes. Of course the Green Line should be revisited. Who would put a tunnel under a river in a recurring floodplain? So when it is completely underwater in the next flood, do we rename it as Nenshi Sewer? The tunnel added so much to the cost of the Green Line that they end up not building it to go anywhere but downtown. Scrap the tunnel, and build the train to go to the southeast side of Calgary, that has a dire need for mass transit and actually should have been scheduled before going to the west side of Calgary, which decision was made only because the mayor of that day lived in that direction. There is a huge population base in the southeast corner, not to mention the large industrial areas that would provide service for those employed in that area. This is the kind of planning that is done by a council that has no concern for how public funds are being wasted. Ernie Dutrick. Strong feelings on both sides of this argument. Call me, maybe. If mayoral candidate Bill Smith is receiving complaints on the Thanksgiving email sent by a contractor, then what is mayoral candidate Naheed Nenshi's excuse for using privileged information? I sent an email to the mayor of Calgary regarding the Amazon HQ2 with my phone number to be used as verification of my email address. This phone number, without my permission, was used in a recent robocall by mayoral candidate Nenshi, which suggests this candidate is data mining the mayor's office for his own political campaign and gain. He, or someone in his office, forwarded my information onto his campaign office for use. As you will note, I don't live in Calgary. Where is the level playing field? Brian Marconi. That sound pretty hinky. Brutal job. Both Premier Rachel Notley's and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's failure bringing a pipeline promise to Alberta is a disgrace. Like his father, Trudeau overpromises and underdelivers for Alberta is why no Liberals get elected here. Kent Her will be a hit wonder but shown the door at election time. Mr. Her and Ms. Notley failed to realize they live in an energy province. The equalization program should be dumped immediately because Eastern Canada ceases to realize the importance of it and instead looks at it as a right. Where is Notley, leader of Alberta? The NDP seems to have crawled under a rock for now but likely will come back with new job creation program to raise taxes and build more fast food establishments that we can all work at. None of us should be surprised by lack of unity provided by JT with the West. It would be beneficial though to bring back Western separation. Seems that whenever Quebec was leaving town, the government gave them anything they wanted to stop this. What's the worst that could happen? They let us go and we become profitable and get taxes down to more reasonable standards. At the very least, Mr. Trudeau may worry about leaving a legacy of breaking up the country. With no provincial leader or prime minister supporting Alberta, what's left at SKAPIN can't see it coming to that, but no doubt Albertans are fed up with the shoddy treatment. My choice is. The decision for mayor of Calgary seems to have boiled down to two candidates. The incumbent Mr. Nenshi and the closing Mr. Smith. If one is to believe the latest polling, Mr. Smith has surged ahead by appealing to 34-year-olds. This seems oddly specific, but polling has been somewhat confusing at best here in Alberta over the last few provincial and civic elections. I have had the privilege of witnessing both talk in a public forum on the issues. The object of styling of Mr. Smith is definitely less coherent than the thought-out, experienced replies of Mr. Nenshi. I have a good idea who should be mayor. See you at the polls. Rick Rubottom. Well, aren't you playing coy, Rick? Record of failure. I am a lifetime Calgarian that is very proud that fact. Years ago, I did not vote for Nenshi, but for Barb Higgins. Well, after Nenshi won the election, he seemed like it was a great choice, but then he started doing everything he campaigned against. I don't know who wanted that big circle in the middle of nowhere. We have bike paths all over downtown but no parking for the people who may need it, as well as workers who need their vehicles because their tools can't go on transit. Now we have this artwork that nobody likes or wants, but that was okay. He preaches responsibility but he doesn't care. He has his agenda and that is all he cares about, and now he is behind in the polls. He pulled out the race card. What a bunch of crap. What is next? Calling out the LGTB community just because you're losing. Leave this race for the mayor's chair about what is best for Calgary and not just one person's view. Leon Greenlee. We'll see how his race comments play out in the vote Monday.